Welcome to this podcast produced for Business Lincolnshire as part of the Fit for Business programme. I'm Guy Lewis and we're joined today by Anna Maxwell from C2 Safety. Hi Anna, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks Guy. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, I'm good. So what's been on the mind of some of your businesses this week?
I've been trying to explain to some of my businesses about what responsibilities they have as a business with regard to health and safety. A lot of people think that health and safety is just something that kind of exists in the background, doesn't need much thought, it doesn't need much effort, especially if they're in a low risk business and what they're doing isn't sort of construction, because that's everybody's immediate interpretation of health and safety.
So where did health and safety start? Where did it all begin?
It was back in the industrial era of Britain, 1938, down in the mines. A miner got crushed by a piece of plant and they tried to make a case to say it wasn't their fault. The plant owner said it wasn't our problem. The family of the worker said it wasn't his problem, it wasn't his accident. And eventually the government stepped in and created some legislation which meant that employers had a duty to keep their employees safe. Anybody that they're responsible for must be kept safe. If you go to work in the morning, you expect to be able to come home safely and in one piece at the end of the day.
So what are all these duties? What are they?
They're quite simple and they are all listed under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, which is the overarching legislation regarding health and safety. But then it's broken down into lots of different regulations underneath it. But the basic principle is that an employer is responsible for any person that is involved in their company or their business or their organisation or the work that they do. They must be kept safe. So we have a duty to give a safe place of work, including safe access and egress. So they need to be able to come onto site or leave the premises or be able to get to the site of work within that premises. So if you're in a factory, it might be that they can get from the car park to the workplace or from the welfare, the changing rooms to a production line. If they're in a shop, it might be that actually it's as simple as going through the front door, through the shop, into the back area, being able to put down their stuff, turn around and come back to work in the shop front. And in an office, you might be in a multi-occupation building where there are several companies, and it's making sure that all of those companies are acting together to make sure that hallways and elevators and stairs and doorways are safe. And so it's as simple as that in terms of access and egress.
Okay.
Then we're looking for safe equipment. So anything that you provide for your employees to work, be it machinery, be it a till, where the till draw is a bit dicky and it might spin out and hit you on the head.
A bit like own all hours, take your fingers off.
Yeah, I was thinking more cocktail when he, when he presses the button and it spins out and hits him in the head. But so the work equipment that you provide must be safe, must be serviceable, must be fit for use. You've got to inspect it. You've got to, if it requires inspection, and there are specific regulations regarding that, provision of use of work equipment regulations, for example. So everything is sort of specified, but it's generalised that you have to have a safe place of work. And that's the safe equipment. The other thing that you have to have is safe systems of work. So that is how you use the equipment. That is training of your employees. That is competent employees. So if they need to have a qualification or they've got to do a training course, then they go and do that. If there isn't a specific training course for that, then you have a safe process in place that you as the employer have gone, okay, we need to do A, B and C in order to work safely. And alongside that comes adequate supervision of those workers. So you have people checking that standards of work are correct, that people are wearing the right equipment, that people are able to work safely because the correct guards are in place on the machines. And I'm starting to go down the line of, I'm not just talking about manufacturing and production because that's what it sounds like, but just you have a safe process of work that when you are getting boxes out of the off shelves in the back of the office or in the shop to restock, that your employees have got manual handling training, for example, and that they are aware of limitations of their capability for lifting boxes, that, why do we not store things above head height? Why do we store things on rails? Why do we not have piles of clothes? It's as simple as that. So we're not necessarily into the real technical stuff. And also we have a responsibility to make sure that everyone is trained and everyone is aware of safe systems of work, because we can train up one employee who can work really safely. But actually, it's also everybody else around them. They need to be able to work safely. They need to be able to keep themselves safe and keep other people safe. And so we don't want people affected by anything that as a business you do, but also as employees, because they have a responsibility under the Health and Safety at Work Act as well. It's not all just the employer.
Okay, so the business has got this duty of care to make sure you can get in and out of work safe, that it's safe equipment, that you've got proper training, that actually, if you can't get training on a process because you're quite unique, develop your own, but make sure everyone's working around is competent as well. Okay, can you delegate these sort of duties of care?
So you can never delegate the liability. As the director of a company, for example, you are always ultimately responsible for the health and safety of the people in your organisation or affected by your organisation. Now, you can delegate the duties to ensure that happens. So if you've got line managers, they're providing the overwatch and the supervision of the competencies. You could have a training manager who is responsible for ensuring that everybody's trained. You've got somebody who's responsible for doing inductions and workplace inductions, cover, training. So you can delegate those, and you can delegate for somebody who must be responsible to make sure that we meet the Health and Safety at Work Act and the various regulations within it. But ultimately, the director or the proprietor or the owner is the person who must make it happen.
Wow, so it's very important that you know about these things.
Yes.
Because it goes right to the top.
Yeah, and it's not just like the director of a limited company. I mean, sole traders can be affected because they can do something which impacts the health and safety of others. So let's go back to a small shop where it is maybe a one-person band, and the layout of their shop creates a trip hazard. Somebody comes into their shop and falls over because they've left too narrow a gap and they've tripped over a box of sale items on the floor, for example, and somebody falls over and bangs their head on a rail. The responsibility for that lies with the sole trader. That sole trader is the person who is responsible within the company, and action would be or could be taken against that person. And the reasons that we have these duties that we must comply is to avoid incidents, but also people can claim against them. You know, there is civil and criminal prosecution routes in the event of injuries or breaches of health and safety or failings of health and safety. And that is, it's important that your sole traders, your partners and the directors and boards of trustees, and they can all be held responsible. So HSE can prosecute a company, but they can also prosecute individuals within that company where they have fallen short of the duty of care and the requirements.
Okay. And are there other reasons why we need to manage health and safety?
Well, there's a multitude of reasons. I could talk all day about it, but there's a moral duty as people. We don't want to hurt people. We shouldn't hurt people. And so we have that moral duty to make sure that people come to work, they have a safe environment, and they can go home to their family at the end of the day. We have a legal duty because the statutory regulations are such. We must abide by the law. We must meet the requirements of the Health and Safety at Work Act. But there's also a financial duty. Well, not a financial duty, a financial reason. Health and safety, it's much cheaper to put in the prevention rather than the cure, as they say, isn't it? So if you have an accident, you are looking at time off for investigating an accident, time off of the individual that's had the accident, the cost of perhaps bringing in a company to investigate the accident, bringing in a company to remedy the issue. But also if you get prosecuted by the Health and Safety Executive or any other enforcing agency, so local authorities, food and standards, hygiene, environmental health, all of those sorts of things, lots of people can prosecute you as a business. They will charge, health exempt, HSE have got a fee for intervention, which is their fee for telling you you've broken the law. And nobody wants that. And then there's the fines at the end of it, plus there's criminal court cases, there's legal costs, and then there is the fine potentially at the end of it, which can be based on your turnover as a company, which can be quite a terrifying amount of money.
So almost spending the time early on, getting the process, actually implementing the right policies. That sort of whole final burden can disappear. It's just you spend a small amount of money up front, and actually it could save you a lot more in the long term.
And have a positive safety culture, and that positive safety culture is it really helps to meet all of the requirements of the Health and Safety at Work Act. Your duties as an employer, your duty of care keeps your employees engaged and aware of their part in your company remaining legal in terms of health and safety.
My name is Guy Lewis, and you're with myself and Anna Maxwell discussing business, health and safety responsibilities. I just want to know what are my responsibilities as an employer, and does it change with the size of company?
Every company must have an awareness of health and safety. They must have a system in place. So every company must have a health and safety policy statement, which basically says, I am going to abide by the rules and regulations that are required by law. So, however, once they get to 5 employees or more, and when I say employees, that can include casual staff, part-time staff, people on 0 hours, volunteers, directors, non-executive directors, silent partners, anybody who is involved in the organisation and structure of that company. So once you've got 5 or more, you have to have a written down policy.
Okay.
That policy must include arrangements for the safe systems of work, must include the hierarchy and the responsibilities of the people within that hierarchy, from everything from your shop floor workers all the way up to your directors. Anybody who's got a role must be aware of their responsibilities, so we write them in the policy. We've got to have risk assessments for the core tasks that you do, and so controller substances hazardous to health, we must identify them. That all forms part of the policy.
Okay.
And there's the policy statement. So the policy statement needs to be signed by a director or the owner of the company. That needs to be renewed annually, and it needs to be displayed in the workplace.
Okay.
A couple of mandatory documents to display in the workplace is the health and safety at work poster, the health and safety policy for the company, and you should be displaying your public liability and employer liability insurance certificates, or any liability insurance certificates that apply. And they should be in a place in the workplace where everybody can see them if they come in to it. So you'll notice if you go to the doctor's surgery that they will be up on a notice board somewhere. If you go to a vet, or if you go to the hairdressers, they will be there. They may be slightly more discreet. They won't be totally in your face, but they are there.
Okay. And
that shows people coming into the business that business takes health and safety seriously.
Okay. And I guess if you're small, if you haven't got five people in your 5 employees in your business, I guess it's still a good idea to actually have a policy.
You've got to have the policy statement.
Okay.
The other thing that you have to do as a business is have risk assessments. Okay. Now, your employees, you must make your employees aware of the risk that they face when they are in the workplace, but also for your visitors and members of your public, they need to have access to information about any risks that may compromise their safety. So if you're going to have risk assessments, you've got to have them, you might as well have them written up, and you've got to make sure that they're communicated to your staff. So health and safety policy, little part of a handbook, workplace inductions, that's where we start to introduce the risk assessments to your employees. Significant risks, you need to make sure that they're identified and that they're signed. So obviously if you've got an uneven step, or there's something weird about your workplace, or there is moving vehicles, or there's people working above you, put a sign up, and that is advising people of the risk. But we'll talk about risks further down the line. But it's that communication of the information to individuals to keep a workplace safe.
So having looked at the business's responsibilities, does the employee have any?
Yes, that's a good question, because people assume it's just the company that's liable, but employees have got a part to play in it as well. So they have a duty of care to take care of their own health and safety, and also that of others who might be affected by their actions. So it's a bit of common sense that if you, as an employee, lay a tool down next to you, but somebody else is walking past and they trip up over it, actually, it's your responsibility as employee.
That word common sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and what other sorts of things does that cover that the employee's responsibility for?
They have a responsibility to follow any training that they've received. So if they've been told how to do something, they don't need to know the reasons as to why they've got to do it that way, but that is the safe system of work. They therefore have to do it.
Okay.
If they don't do that, they're contravening, they're facing disciplinary action potentially, but also endangering themselves and others by not doing what they've been told. They've got to use any equipment that they've been provided for health and safety. They also have a duty to not tamper, change, or damage that equipment.
Okay.
So horseplay, throwing hard hats around or whatever it might be. It's just, they've got to take care of the kit and equipment that's been given to them by the employer, and they have to wear it. Now, for some people, they find it uncomfortable, and there are reasons as to why they find it uncomfortable. And the employer has a duty to provide equipment that is suitable, not just for the job, but for the person as well. So if you have a medical issue, they have to take that into consideration. So be it ear protectors or eye protection or clothing, footwear, all of those sorts of things. And there is so much PPE available nowadays that we can normally find something that suits most people. But that's an agreement between the employee and the employer. But the employee does have a duty to wear it.
Okay.
They also have a duty to speak up and to, if they see an issue, that they report it.
Okay.
The employer has a duty to listen to that employee and take it seriously, investigate what has been mentioned. It's got to be an open door policy about health and safety.
Okay.
It goes both ways. There may be something that the management don't see, but actually the employees and people who are actually performing the processes identify a shortcoming or something that puts them at risk. They have a duty to speak up as well. And they shouldn't be scared to do so. And line managers, we would hope, would be receptive to anybody voicing concerns about health and safety, be it of others or their own safety. And part of that is the health and well-being of individual employees. If you are being asked to stand at a desk to pack something, for example, and it is causing you pain, then you need to mention it.
Okay.
And the employer, then their duty kicks in to make sure that you can do your job correctly.
Okay. So basically, follow the training that you've got. Cooperate with the employee's health and safety. If you've got PPE, wear it, use it.
Yep.
And if you see something that's wrong, speak up and say something about it. Or if something's affecting your performance, speak up about it. And then it should get solved rather than being an excuse after the fact. Completely.
And the other thing that needs to be mentioned is that if you have PPE and it is broken, that you don't wear it, but you don't perform the task without it. So you have to report it and go and get new PPE, replacement PPE. You have to be aware of your own safety. You know what you should be doing. That's why we have workplace inductions. That's why we have training. That's why we have ongoing health and safety awareness training.
Okay, just move on. You actually mentioned something about insurance, and we've covered some of this actually on a previous podcast about the difference. But you mentioned, get insured.
Yes, completely. The insurance is that they always look for a reason not to cover you. And one of those is if you don't meet the regulations, if you don't have safe systems in place, if you don't have a policy in place, if you don't show that you are training and providing information in order to keep people safe, they're going to be less inclined to pay out in the event that you have a liability. So do read the small print. And insurance brokers and insurance companies sometimes have better premiums if you can show that you have a competent person involved, that you have qualifications, that you do keep records.
Okay.
So as a business, appoint a competent person to be in charge of your health and safety. That can be somebody internally. You can send them on training courses. So IOSH do, which is the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. They do good workplace courses for managers and directors as well, which go through the requirements. Or you can have a third party, like a health and safety consultancy. They're not expensive and they will provide tailored, pragmatic solutions. They'll look at your business and go, well, you need A, B, and C, as opposed to you thinking, oh, I need X, Y, and Z. But all information about health and safety is available online at the HSE website. It takes time to go through it. So having a competent person will be able to understand and direct you to what you need to do as a business. You need to make sure you've got the right workplace facilities, that you've got welfare, so toilets, ability to wash hands, especially with what we've gone through for the past couple of years. And that they need somewhere to be able to rest, to sit down, that's dedicated, not necessarily at their workplace. You need to make sure that you've got first aid that is appropriate to what you do, that you've got eye wash stations, that you've got burns plasters if you're working in a hot works environment, but also you've got trained personnel or people who know what to do in the event of an emergency.
Okay.
And you also need to have an understanding of some of the regulations that apply to you as a business.
Okay.
And that's the key one, because you can't just say, I didn't know. Our law, the UK government require you to know the basic rules that apply to the business that you do. And that includes the health and safety regulations.
So a competent person, the right workplace, someone around first aid who knows the responsibilities, but then the other bit is know the law, know how health and safety is applied to your business.
And then for the business itself, one of the key things is to identify or know how to identify the risks of what you do, because that's got the implications on the training, the PPE, the law. And so you do need to determine your risks.
Great. Thanks for the session today. Hopefully we shall meet again in a couple of weeks' time and carry on this conversation. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
You've been listening to a Business Lincolnshire podcast. Look out for the next episode. If you're listening on the Business Lincolnshire YouTube channel, don't forget to give us a thumbs up or subscribe down below. If you're on your favourite podcast platform, then remember to follow the show. More information at businesslincolnshire.com.